The initial seed for the film was really my research into real cases of mass psychogenic illness and hysterics throughout history, and kind of looking at patterns and starting to think about reimagining those kind of subconscious movements as choreographies of sorts. And then I brought on my producer, Lisa Kuroff, who's also a co-writer, and my editor, Celia Davis, as a co-writer. I had never written a narrative screenplay, so the idea of making it a really collaborative process where we could talk it out and put it in the room, and including kind of varied voices, I think was helpful from phase one. Yeah.
Did you ever, during that process, think about defining exactly what is happening, or was that always the kind of the ambiguity of it always part of what the story would be?
Yeah, I think in real cases that we looked at, they seem to remain a mystery. And I definitely think that our film takes a leap towards the allegorical. So in kind of keeping both with the historical cases and where we were hoping we wanted to keep it open. But there was definitely a push and pull between, is this a story about Tony, or is this a story about these episodes? And the writing breakthrough really came through the decision to make it very singular in its vantage point. And every, the fits filtered through Tony's perspective helped open it up, I think.
And how did you communicate that with the actors in terms of what you wanted them to think about it or all that?
Yeah, so actually the original seed for this film did not take place with Drill or in Cincinnati. That came through our casting process. So we actually really wanted to cast all the girls in the film from the same dance team. So everyone you see in our film dances together, including Royalty Hightower, our lead. And so we started to collaborate with them as authors in the process. We really wrote for that location, and a lot of things needed to be adapted, but I think the core of the film remained the same. And they rewrote their own dialogue, and so we really workshopped the script for about 6 weeks before we started filming. And that was about comfortability, and I think kind of just strengthening it. And our process as filmmakers was really to be open book, and allow the kids to really take ownership of what we were doing together. Yeah.
So how did you find Royalty as the lead Tony in the film?
So we opened up girl casting only to the Q Kids. There's a couple hundred of them in real life. We cast 45 in our film. Royalty was the 8th girl that read. So I had heard quite a few horror stories about kid casting, which was not our experience. It was just kind of incredible. I originally imagined that we would cast someone older who looks younger. Royalty was 9 the day that she read. But I think it helped because Alexis, who plays Beezy, was also 9, and they had a really great energy, and they were the 2 actors that really excited me the most, and I deeply just wanted to work with them as people. And they're both very, Royalty is so engaged with herself, which is a requirement, I think, for Tony, but she's just able to reflect back to you on her face, and do a lot with listening.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the most interesting things of the film is that there isn't a ton of dialogue, and there shows a lot of reliance on their performances to carry the story and what's going on.
Yeah, we talked a lot about movement. So we worked with 3 choreographers, 2 drill choreographers, Mariah and Shreya Jones. They're identical twins. They're incredible. And then we also worked with a modern dancer as a movement consultant. And we really approached every scene through movement because these are trained dancers. They compete nationally. They're elite artists and performers. So every emotional thing that we were working with, we talked about movement. How do you hold your shoulders? When are you breathing? Is your core engaged? When? And so that's how we broke things down. And with Royalty in particular, she's a very physical performer. So, which is why she's great for Tony. And she actually crossed out quite a few of her lines during the script process. She's like, redundant, actions, they're already saying enough. So yeah, she was a great collaborator.
And how about I'm curious about the interaction with the scenes with the boxing, because that's also very, very choreographed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're also, Deshaun Miner, who plays Jermaine, is ranked number 3 in the country. He's a junior Olympian. So these are elite athletes who were gracious and generous with me with their time while they were like competing for titles. So yeah, we really wanted, Royalty had to train to box. She trained for about 3 weeks, and a lot of that was with Deshawn as kind of bonding, but it was very choreographed. I think the qualities that make you a great boxer translate seamlessly into dance. There's a different energy with boxing than with dance, but yeah, I think we approached that as a dance film as well.
And this was part of a process that Venice Biennale, I'm sorry, Cinema College, where it's a micro budget. Can I ask? It's a really bad Q&A question, but like, what does that mean in terms of this? What is a micro budget? What was the budget for the film?
Yeah, well, it's very public. So the Venice Biennale has an initiative, and the Venice Biennale is one of the oldest art institutions in the world. They fund many art disciplines. Cinema's their newest art, so officially cinema's art, for 3 years. And they have, it's not only a micro budget, they give you a grant of 150,000 euros, but they also require you to make the film in under a year. So for us, budgetary constraints are one element of limitations. Time actually was much more challenging for us, because often when you're working in a micro budget scale, you take your time and you hustle and you do jobs on the side, and we weren't allowed that kind of privilege in this case. And so it really became everyone, like all hands on deck. But there was this other currency because we were going to be premiering at Venice, and that actually really affected the attitude on set. I think oftentimes in the American indie space, you work and you work and you work, and you actually never know if what you're doing will ever be seen by anybody. And that's really hard to work in that space and to rally every day, being like, it could be great and nobody sees it. That happens every day in our industry. So I think knowing that it was going to premiere at Venice was a huge motivating factor for our team. And actually the constraints, I think, made us make bolder choices and really examine what was necessary and focus on those lean kind of crucial elements.
And your shoot was 30 days?
It was 19 with cast.
19 days, yeah. And it was all in
72-minute features.
It was all in Cincinnati, right?
Yeah, we shot almost exclusively in a single location. What you see on screen is one building, in the rec center, community center where the Q Kids actually practice. And yeah, we did a couple extra pickup days after we had a fine cut of the film, some close-ups and a few little moments. And yeah, so I think it added up to like 22 total.
And can I ask about your cinematographer, Paul Yee, who was so instrumental in all just the great look of the film and just the...
Yeah, Paul is incredible. One of my oldest friends, he's a gaffer by trade, and he's been shooting. He's actually shot almost everything I've ever directed, so we have a great kind of easy language that is also founded in challenging each other in a really positive way. But he came on before we had a full draft of the script, which I think is a very rare dedication from a DP. And his philosophy, we look up to a lot of DPs like Nestor Almendros, or who kind of showcase kind of functionality as elegance. And he came on for 2 weeks before we started shooting, made sun charts for every single room. But really our conversation centered around placing the audience experience in Tony's body and vantage point and what POV meant, because sometimes POV is seeing what she sees, but most often POV is watching her watch, and kind of setting these rules for ourselves, being very sensitive to dance and highlighting dance in its conventional and kind of abstract forms in the film.
Yeah, it's a lot of interesting choices. Like there are very few adults in the film. There's no homes, and I was wondering how much of that came out. I mean, I don't know if it's answerable in this way, but like how much of it came out of what you wanted to achieve before you came onto set, and how much it was afterwards, or just knowing your limitations.
Yeah, it was always our focus to kind of keep it in the kids' world, because we felt like once you introduce adults, particularly Legs and Charisma's characters lose power. They need to be the top of the pyramid, and adults coming in kind of take that power away from them. But also those memories that I have of that time, adults are kind of blurry and in the like part of the lens that doesn't register focus no matter how far they are. But yeah, that's what my memories feel like. So kind of being true to that. We tried actually more extreme versions where adults didn't exist in the world, and that felt inauthentic to what we were trying to say. And so yeah, but we also really, our philosophy was that these few moments after school before you go home become so formative. And yeah, so like the overpass is essentially her bedroom. If it were another script, those scenes would be her alone in her room, kind of rocking out to her record player. Like that's what's happening, but it's in the overpass. And like the laundry room kind of becomes their living room. And like, so we thought about how each of the spaces functioned emotionally, and if we were in kind of a more traditional narrative script, what would those places be? But yeah.
And how about the music? It's so distinctive. How did you choose the music? How did you discover it?
So the original score is by Danny Bensi and Sandra Jurians, who was just a gift to collaborate with them. The idea for pretty much all of my collaborations started with talking about breath, and the score really we focused on the instrument as a body and being able to hear breath go through it, and also allowing the audience to know that something was off before the fits enter into the narrative. So the first time you hear music is really like something is brewing, something irreversible is beginning to change with Toni, and allowing the score to be her voice. And the other two music choices that we sampled, we really wanted like music that these girls would dance to. So the Rai Rai Taiga came out of searching for that. And then the end song, we actually shot the end sequence to a different song. So we were locked into a very specific time signature. And our assistant editor brought that song to us. And it's just one of those things where you're grateful that filmmaking and collaborative art and other people are bringing you ideas that are better than anything you could have found on your own.
Well, I want to thank you for being here, and thank
you guys so
much.
much.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks.